Sissels fled out of Sebastian's house, scared to even turn back and see what she left behind into the crisp morning air. Each step felt like dragging weights behind her, the cold biting against her skin but unable to numb the firestorm within. She could still feel the warmth of his hands, the press of his lips, and the whispered confessions that had unraveled her. They lingered like a brand, searing her thoughts and making her heart ache. Her mind was in chaos. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to throw herself into his arms and lose herself in the safety of his embrace. But guilt gripped her harder with each stride, pulling her deeper into the abyss of regret. "What have I done?" she thought over and over. She had crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed, shattering not just her own life but those of the two men she cared for most, and the terrifying truth, if given the chance, she knew she would do it again. By the time she reached home, the early sunlight was already creeping across the horizon. She opened the door, her body trembling as though it had borne the weight of all her sins in that single morning. Tears streamed unchecked down her face as she stepped inside, closing the door behind her with a soft click. She hoped to disappear into her room unnoticed, but her mother's sharp voice called out from the living room. "Cecil, is that you?" Her mother appeared in the hallway, her expression softening when she saw her daughter's tear-streaked face. "What's wrong, darling?" Cecil shook her head, trying to brush past. "It's nothing, Mum." But her mother's hand gently caught her arm, stopping her in her tracks. "It's not nothing," she said, her voice full of concern. "Come here." She led Cecil into Cecil's room, sitting on the bed. The familiarity of the space and the warmth of her mother's presence were both a comfort and a torment. Cecil broke. The sobs came hard and fast as she buried her face in her hands. Her mother pulled her close, stroking her hair like she had when Cecil was a little girl with scraped knees. "Talk to me, sweetheart," she coaxed softly. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." Through her tears, Cecil finally spoke. "Mum, I don't know what to do. I love Sebastian. I've always loved him, but I'm scared." Her mother's hand paused for a moment before resuming its gentle rhythm. "Scared of what?" "Of everything," Cecil confessed, her voice cracking. "What if he leaves again? What if I give him my heart completely and he breaks it all over again? I barely survived last time. I don't think I could go through that again." Her mother didn't interrupt, letting the words spill out like a dam that had burst. "But I can't stop loving him," Cecil continued, her voice growing more desperate. "It's like he's part of me, and no matter how hard I try to move on, he's always there. But then there's Ethan. Ethan has been so good to me. He loves me, Mum, and I've betrayed him. I kissed Sebastian, and it was everything I've ever wanted. But it's wrong. Ethan doesn't deserve this. He doesn't deserve my disloyalty. I'm so selfish." Her mother pulled back slightly to look at her, her expression a mix of sadness and understanding. "Cecil, love is messy. It's complicated and painful, but it's also the most beautiful thing we get to experience in life. You can't keep running from your feelings because you're afraid of being hurt. That's not fair to you or to them." "But what about Ethan?" Cecil whispered. "I can't hurt him like this. He's been nothing but kind and loving to me." Her mother nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Ethan deserves the truth, Cecil. He deserves to be with someone who loves him wholeheartedly, not someone torn between him and another man. And Sebastian, he deserves to know how you feel, even if you're scared." Cecil's tears slowed as she processed her mother's words, the weight of the advice settling in her heart. "What if Sebastian leaves again?" she asked quietly. Her mother smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from Cecil's face. "Then you'll survive because you're stronger than you think. But you have to give him the chance to stay. Love is about trust, Cecil, and that starts with you trusting yourself and your feelings." "I just don't want to hurt anyone," Cecil said, her voice breaking. "Sweetheart, someone is going to get hurt no matter what," her mother said gently. "But pretending everything is fine when it's not will only make it worse. Be honest. With Ethan, with Sebastian, and most importantly with yourself, it won't be easy, but it's the only way forward." Cecil leaned into her mother's embrace, seeking solace in the warmth and wisdom she so desperately needed. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, a mix of comfort and challenge. Deep down, Sissel knew she couldn't keep running, not from her feelings, nor from the difficult decisions that awaited her. The time had come to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Meanwhile, Sebastian's heart thundered in his chest. The memory of their kiss still burned within him, the raw intensity of the moment seared into his soul. Yet beneath the rush of longing lay a gnawing sense of regret, not for the kiss itself, but for the confusion and pain it had caused her. He needed to see her, to make sure she didn't carry this burden alone. Sebastian trudged into his room, the weight of the morning's events pressing heavily on his chest. He felt as if something inside him had cracked wide open. He dressed himself, running a hand through his hair for the 100th time as the memory of Sissel's tear-streaked face flashed in his mind. For all the resentment he wanted to feel towards Ethan, Sebastian found himself struggling. He had seen Ethan with Sissel, his thoughtfulness, his unwavering support, and the gentle way he looked at her as though she was the center of his world. How could he hate someone who clearly loved her so much? How could he despise a man who even Sebastian had to admit was everything Sissel deserved? It wasn't Ethan he disliked. It was the circumstances, the timing, the fact that Sissel, the woman who still held his heart so completely, was caught between them. And maybe, Sebastian thought bitterly, it was himself, his inability to let go of her, to step aside and allow her the happiness he knew Ethan could give. He exhaled sharply, leaning back and closing his eyes. Maybe it was time to stop fighting. The thought clawed at his insides, leaving a raw ache in its wake. What if the best thing he could do for Sissel was to leave? If he stayed, he risked complicating her life further, forcing her into a choice she shouldn't have to make. But if he went back to Aunt Jasmine, to the family business she had so lovingly built, he could give Sissel the space to live her life with Ethan, free from the shadow of their past. The realization settled over him like a lead blanket. He would never stop loving her, that much was certain. But love isn't about holding on when it hurts the one you cherish. Sometimes, love means letting go. Still, the thought of stepping away left him hollow. The image of Sissel with Ethan, smiling, happy, loved, was bittersweet. He wanted her to have everything she deserved, even if it meant his heart would carry the weight of her absence for the rest of his life. Sebastian rose from the couch and paced the room, his emotions warring inside him. Could he really walk away? Would it even make a difference? His thoughts were interrupted by a memory of Sissel's eyes earlier that morning, conflicted, pained, but undeniably filled with love. His love. It was that memory that compelled him to stop pacing, grab his jacket and step out of his house. If he was going to leave, he needed to make things right first. He needed Sissel to know that he didn't blame her, that what they had shared wasn't a mistake. And most importantly, she needed to know that she didn't owe him anything. Not her guilt, not her apologies, and certainly not her love. Sebastian found himself walking towards Sissel's house before he'd even realized it, his resolve strengthening with every passing moment. She deserved clarity, just as much as he needed closure.